What is the state of the mining sector in South Africa? Over the last 15 years, there's been very little new investment in mining projects in the country, and there are many reasons for this. To discuss why, I'm joined by Paul Miller, who is a consultant in the mining sector. Paul, welcome to the CRA channel.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, obviously it all relates to commodity prices, and that drives a lot of sentiment about the mining industry. But I suppose the bottom line is South Africa hasn't had any significant exploration since the 1980s. And 15 years into the new regulatory environment, people are beginning to ask, well, what now? What's going to happen when our existing mines close? It was fine 15 years ago when transformation was all about the existing industry. Now it's like, whoa, what next? What's going to replace our existing mines? And that's where we run into some serious issues, because not so much the policy that concerns me, it's the administration of that policy. It is almost impossible to know what's happening on the ground in the South African mining industry, because the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy no longer produces any knowledge or statistics on its own industry. So we don't know how many prospecting rights are being issued. We don't know whether drill rigs are turning. We don't know how much money is being spent prospecting, because nobody tracks that stuff.
So Paul, in terms of the overall regulatory framework, I think one of the observations is that incumbent mining operations can afford to hire lawyers and regulatory compliance teams to make sure they tick the boxes, but that represents a significant barrier to entry for new investment, new potential mining projects. Could you explain how that works in a bit more detail?
Well, how it came about was that the transition from the old order to the new order that was negotiated between about 1999 and 2002 was a negotiation between big business, big labor, and big government. And big business had sunk capital. They had spent billions digging holes in the ground, which they couldn't move. So they needed to negotiate an outcome that allowed them to protect the return on their sunk capital. They knew that new capital could be invested anywhere in the world. And on a ranking and rating the different projects around the world, the money would go where the best return was. And clearly, what big business and big government didn't realize in South Africa was that that was the case, that they were arguing to protect existing sunk capital, not for the future of the industry. There was no voice for the future of the industry in that negotiation. And quite frankly, it's all come back to roost. The chickens have come back to roost. We're now sitting 15 years in. There's been very little new investment and very little new exploration. I must moderate that a little in that there are about 700 operating in commercial scale mines in South Africa. And there has been some private investment in new coal mines, new chrome mines, new manganese mines. What is interesting, of course, is that none of that has been raised in public capital markets.
Paul, can we look more closely at the mining charter itself? Initially, when the charter was put on the table, it was seen as an aspirational set of values that industry and government would work towards collaboratively. But now we see it's become a lot more codified. The equity requirements have become even more onerous. So I think that there's still a very high degree of uncertainty inherent in the mining charter and many quite restrictive regulations. What are your thoughts?
Well, you don't have to look at the detail of the mining charter to accept that it introduces uncertainty. There's no doubt in my mind that the original legislation and the original negotiating parties didn't anticipate that there'd ever be more than one charter. In fact, the Act says that the minister must promulgate a charter within 6 months of the Act going into effect. It says nothing about a charter 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And what's happened, I think, is that the minister or the various ministers have decided to issue new charters to fill a gap and progressively use the charter to transform the industry. That was never the original intention. In fact, the ANC and the government went around the world and promised investors that the 26% BE requirement, which was the grand compromise, like it or lump it, of the original charter would never change. We've now changed that. The minister's reserved for himself the right to issue new charters at will at any time. So it doesn't matter what's in the charter. Any investor simply asks the question, you've set a trajectory, what's in the next charter? What's in Charter 4? What's in Charter 5? And of course, there's no way of knowing that. So that's the uncertainty the charter process has introduced. It's almost immaterial what's in the charter. People just need to know that there can be a new charter at any time. The current minister said that he won't introduce another charter for 5 years. Well, he might change. And of course, 5 years is not very long in the mining industry.
So, Paul, what is the way forward from here? What solutions would you propose to unlock business activity and new investment in the mining sector?
Well, the first step is to fix the administration of the existing policy. So we saw a situation where the activist officials in the DMR, as it was at the time, controlled all information in order to drive a transformation agenda, to get people, the right people into the right deals to force the transformation. I understand that. That was a time and place. But unfortunately, what's happened is that power has now been abused for corrupt ends. So enough judges have found that the DMRE's actions are either corrupt or incompetent. That's not my opinion. That's actually in judgments against the department. And there are plenty of them. So with that in place, with a corrupt, incompetent, inept administration of our regulatory environment, it doesn't really matter what the policy is. Policy is immaterial if the administration doesn't work. So you don't know how long it's going to take you to get a mining license, a mining right. You don't know whether you'll ever get a mining right in the current system. So until that's sorted out, to my mind, the policy is almost immaterial.
Yes, Paul, I agree with you. And I think this is the risk attached to concentrating too much power in the hands of officials, too much discretion in terms of the bureaucracy of the system, and not enabling entrepreneurs, investors, and people with technical expertise to lead the way forward. But Paul, that's all the time we have for today. Just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us on the CRA channel. If you benefited from this video, please do give it a like. Remember to subscribe to the channel and also check out the link below to our 30-day free trial. Until next time, take care.